What is going on, everybody? I am back today, very excited for today's video. I went to the theater today and I actually did a double feature. I watched two movies. I haven't got to do that in a while. I think the last double feature that I did was Beau is Afraid and Evil Dead Rise. And I always have a lot of fun kind of dedicating a really large portion of my day to watching movies, and especially being in the theater environment. I always have so much fun being able to dedicate my time to go and do that. And so I got to watch two new release films, and I'm going to do two separate videos on them because I have a lot to say about both movies. But the first movie I'm going to talk about from my double feature, I was very excited to watch because it's based off of a book that I actually read earlier this year, and that book is Eileen from author Ottessa Moshfegh. And I was a huge fan of the book when I read it, and I heard shortly after I read it that it was being turned into a movie with Anne Hathaway and Thomasin McKenzie, and it was being produced by Neon. And so I was very excited because Neon puts out a lot of very quality films. And the thing I was really interested in, I've read a few books from Ottessa Moshfegh this year, and she is a very interesting author. And the reason why she's an interesting author is her books have very heavy tonal shifts. They can be very dark and dramatic, they can be very comedic, they can be romantic, and she jumps kind of all over the place, but writes the books in a way that it's really easy for you as the reader to kind of be pushed and pulled with her. My favorite book I've read from her this year was called My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and it was absolutely absurd and hilarious. It had its dark and dramatic moments, and I'm just really impressed with her writing style. I think she's incredibly talented. She always has these really interesting female leads and examines the female experience, and in a way that is just so fascinating and interesting and intelligently written. And so reading Eileen, it was really interesting the way it was written, thinking about how it was going to be portrayed in film form, because a lot of the book is stream of consciousness from our protagonist. We're just seeing her, she's kind of talking about her experiences, and so you think, is it going to be voiceover narration, or are they just going to change the structure? And I was really excited to watch this movie, and I'm excited to tell you about it today, and I'm going to be discussing the film Eileen. Eileen is directed by William Oldroyd. In 1960s Massachusetts, an unhappy prison secretary is beguiled by a new co-worker who pulls her into complicity in a crime that surpasses her wildest imagination. So, as I said, very familiar with the material. I read this book early this year, and you know, I've talked about it on my channel a few times. You never really know what you're going to get into when you get book to movie adaptations, and this exceeded every expectation I possibly could have had. Obviously, there are changes in the movie. They've switched some of the material around. It's not told in exactly the same way, but there's enough of the base structure to convey the same feelings that the book is conveying to you, and I think it was really well handled, and I'm excited to tell you about it today. So at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Eileen, played by Thomasin McKenzie, and she lives at home with her father, who is a retired police officer. He sits around at home, drinks all day. He's kind of a belligerent drunk. He gets very mean. The two of them don't necessarily have a very close relationship. We learned very early on that Eileen has lost her mother, so the two of them live together, and her sister has gone on to live her own life, and so she's not at home anymore. And Eileen, for work, works at a boys' prison, and she works in there with all the secretaries. She helps do a lot of the behind the scenes work at the prison. And at the beginning of the movie, we're just really kind of seeing her day-to-day life. She's miserable. She feels incredibly alone, and she has this desperate desire for human connection, whether that be romantic, whether that be just casual conversation, just someone in her life that she can confide in and be around. The very opening scene of the movie is her sitting on this beach. There's this couple like making out in a car, and she's masturbating in her front seat, and we really just get that desperate yearning for some kind of attention. She wants to have that kind of affection in her life. She wants to be close to someone. She just feels alone all the time. And so shortly after, we're introduced to Rebecca St. John, played by Anne Hathaway, who is the new psychiatrist that is going to be working at the boys' prison. And the two of them kind of hit it off. They have this conversation together at the beginning. You can tell Rebecca is really drawn to Eileen's intelligence. She seems to kind of go against the grain compared to the other people that work at the prison. And so the entire film is the two of their relationship. They're building this relationship relationship. They're becoming close friends. Obviously, we can see that Eileen, and even a little bit from Rebecca, that there's more there than just friendship. You can see almost a romantic longing, especially from Eileen's side. And so the entire film is the examination into their relationship. And when we get to the third act, there is a drastic shift in tonality. The entire experience of the film kind of hinges on whether or not you're going to enjoy that third act shift. So as I said, I was a huge fan of this movie. When I read the book initially and I knew that the movie was coming, I was really curious as to how the structure was going to work, because I said the book is kind of written in a very stream of consciousness way, where Eileen's character is sort of narrating for you, kind of just telling stories about things that have happened to her. All of this has already occurred in her life when she's writing this for you. And so you're wondering how they're going to do it. And I really like the structure and the approach to the story. They cut certain elements of the story in at perfect moments to kind of add more into the characters and kind of build on this world for you. The very first thing I want to talk about in this movie and why I loved it so much is the performances. I think Thomasin McKenzie is one of the most underappreciated actresses in Hollywood right now. Everything that she shows up in, I am so impressed with her dedication to the performance. She just lives and breathes the material. I loved her in Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho. I just think that she continues to thrive and prove that she's an incredible actress. And in this movie, it's no exception. She takes on this very specific accent. The film takes place in Massachusetts. She does a really great job at honing that accent and really living it. She does so much in this film with her facial expressions, because so many of the scenes in the movie are these really quiet moments with her being alone, and there's so much that hinges on just what she is able to do with her facial expressions, and I think that it really pays off in this movie. Anne Hathaway is Anne Hathaway. She has been great in so many films. She continues to prove that she's an incredibly talented actress, and I loved her in this movie as well. I think the chemistry between the two of them is fantastic. It's palpable. It leaves you questioning the entire film, kind of what each character's motivations are, where they're at in their headspace. She has this quiet mystery surrounding her character as Rebecca St. John, and I think she does a great job of playing the character, and it's really, both of these characters are exactly kind of how I pictured them when I was reading the book, which I think is very impressive. Next, I want to talk about the cinematography and the production design. This just felt like a movie from a different era. It really felt kind of like a late 60s, early 70s mystery suspense thriller. And you know, stylistically, you can approach something and make it look like that, but it's something about the way the dialogue was written and something about the narrative structure and even the opening and ending credit sequences that just made the movie feel like it was something from a different time. This isn't like an in-your-face suspense thriller. There's so much nuance to the film. It's very quiet in its presentation, and it's very thoughtful. I really appreciated the exploration of power dynamics in this movie. You really kind of see how women were treated in this very specific time period. And even at the beginning, when Anne Hathaway's character is being introduced, they kind of make a thing about her, about how she's a looker, but she's really intelligent. And it's like she's a Harvard graduated psychiatrist, and she's done all this work, and she's incredibly intellectual, and the men in charge are still just kind of gawking at her because of her appearance. But what I love is how both of these characters are the antithesis of how these men perceive them. And I think that the way that it's handled and the nuance of it is just brilliant. You really get everything you need to know through these very minimal interactions, and I like that a lot. Obviously, it is implied through the film that Eileen is a queer character. She has this longing. There's obviously longing for men, but there's also longing for women and for Anne Hathaway's character, and I really love the way that her exploration of her sexuality is portrayed. I think it's really nuanced and very beautiful. I think Thomasin McKenzie's portrayal of the character is fantastic. As I said, the entire film is going to hinge on whether or not you appreciate the third act twist or not. I think it's brilliant. I've read Ottessa Moshfegh's work, and I know how she operates, and I know the kind of things that she throws at her readers, and I think the way they executed that shift in this movie was fantastic. It's kind of just like dropping a bomb on you in the best way possible, and the way that it's executed, I think there's a subtle enough shift that it works, and it makes sense for what the film is building up to. It's a very simplistic story, but it's also a very beautiful story. It was really easy to kind of immerse yourself into the world and care about these characters, and I just really appreciated the execution of the film. And I had such a blast watching this movie, and I'm already really excited to revisit it again. I think it was so expertly handled. It's such a well-made movie, and if you get the chance to catch this in theaters, I would highly recommend it. So have you seen Eileen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was incredible. I thought the performances were fantastic. I thought the cinematography was excellent, and I really hope you enjoy it as much as I did. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.